What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here with JaboctheGreat. Once again, we are back with another episode of The Last Word. A lot of football to talk about from this past weekend. Sunday was a crazy day in the NFL. Had some crazy upsets, blowouts. But I'd say most importantly, we got two games to talk about here to start off with. The Eagles and the Cowboys being the first one. We're glad we talked about this just now. We correctly picked this one. We did pick the Cowboys to win. They did just a little surprising how they did it. They ended up getting a 33-13 win against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles did not score a single touchdown on offense. Their only touchdown coming on defense. The rest of their offense only scored 6 points in this one. I mean, it was complete domination by the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, what the first game between these two teams was like, 28-25, something like that. I kind of expected the same type of thing, just with the Cowboys on top instead of beating the losing ones. They came out and beat them by 20. So two straight dismantlings for the Eagles. Not looking so positive for them at the moment. I mean, they're still 10-3. Not a lot to complain about aside from the past two losses, but like things are okay. So looking at it on paper, for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott goes 24 for 39, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, but he does fumble one time. Tony Pollard leads them on the ground with 59 yards, but it's Rico Dowdle who get 46 yards and a touchdown. A big part of the running game for them last night. Jake Ferguson has been pretty good for tight ends this year. He's gotten a lot of chemistry with Dak Prescott, and he led them in the air last night with 72 yards. CeeDee Lamb was literally just behind him with 71 yards. There was just a yard shy and a touchdown. Michael Gallup got 48 yards and a touchdown as well. Good days for them. That Dak fumble would be recovered by a touchdown. I'll get a little more into that later on. But fumbles were more positive for the Cowboys than negative, as Malik Hooker, Damone Clark, and Donald Wilson all recovered Eagles fumbles. The Eagles could not hold on to the ball last night. And then Brandon Aubrey, for a kicker, had a great day. Hit all of his extra points. That's kind of expected. Went 4 for 4 on field goals, though. And 2 of those, one of them was a 60-yard field goal, and one of them was a 59-yard field goal. So he just could not miss last night. Big part of that win was just that they were kind of automatic from any range when they got to field goal range. They made them a hard offense to keep pace with. And the Eagles did not keep up. So Jalen Hurts went 18 for 27, 197 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. He was second in rushing on the team with 30 yards. DeAndre Swift was ahead of him with 39 yards. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith led in the air with 94 and 73 yards, respectively. But as Terrence noted, the Eagles' offense could not get it done. They did not get anything done in the end zone. So there's no touchdowns. A lot of their drives ended in fumbles or field goals. It was just not a great night for them. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts are the 3 players responsible for those fumbles. None of them were timely. You can never really have a timely fumble. So they suffered for that one for sure. Jalen Carter, though, is I guess like the highlight of the Eagles in this game. He recovered that Dak Prescott fumble, ran it back in for a touchdown. At that point in the game, they're not dead, and so you can maybe argue that Jalen Carter starts to give the Eagles a little bit of hope, as this makes it a 13-24 score. Obviously, the Cowboys are going to get the ball back right after. But still, with the Eagles offense, you're not dead. So there's probably a little bit of joy in the air for Eagles fans when that touchdown goes in. And their other kind of notable moment that I think it's fun to shine a little light on. Braden Mann, the punter, does complete a 28-yard pass on a fake punt. So they had that going for them. They had a few small things go well here and there. But overall, they were essentially shut out. I mean, they do put up 13 points, but 7 of those come from the defense. 6 of those just get put in for field goals. They essentially get shut out in this one. Cowboys come through and make quick work of their rival. They both are now 10-3. But that puts the Cowboys at the top of that division. Now, they did say during the broadcast, if the Eagles win out their game, even if the 2 teams tie or something like that, I think they end up taking it. Or something like that they explained. So the Cowboys are still not in the clear. Obviously, these 2 teams have the same record. But this is major. When we talked about the last game, that Cowboys lost to the Eagles, put them in a weird 2.5 games back. But the Eagles have given them a little bit of help, losing to the Jets and to the Niners. And then now this Cowboys win puts them on even ground. So Cowboys are doing everything they can do to get on top of the NFC East here. Though I do think that if you get the 5th seed, you probably play the NFC South leader, and that's just like a bye week anyway. So not a whole lot on the line for these 2 teams at the moment. But some conversations to be had about the way this Eagles offense kind of sputtered out against both the Cowboys and Niners in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that during the playoff preview. It's like it doesn't really make a difference in that initial round, because now at this point, if you did if the top three teams, just record wise in the NFC, um, not actual playoff positioning, which would be the Eagles, Cowboys, and Niners, of course, they all basically stay the course. The Niners are going to be the ones in the number one seed, like they are now, because obviously the Niners just beat the Eagles and they dismantled the Cowboys early in the season. So out of that group of three there, they've got the tiebreaker over both teams. So really for them, it's not that much concern. Like I said, I mean, Falcons win, Saints win the division, Bucks win. I mean, it does not matter. To be honest, I'd be very surprised if one of these teams would beat um, the Eagles or the Cowboys if they're in the 5 spot. It's just a matter of once you get past that, once you get into the divisional round and everything, and once you get reseeding and stuff, that's when it's going to matter because now if you're in that 5 spot, you're going to be the lowest seed remaining. You're going to have to go to San Francisco and play the Niners, if that's how things end up. So, that's the issue there. But yeah, you're right. It's not really going to mean all that much right now. But if these teams, if the Niners falter and if these teams are able to get back up there, then hey, if they want that number one seed and get the only bye, then yeah, it's going to matter some. But just getting back to this game, I mean, there's really not much to say. Like I was just not expecting this, and it seemed like the sentiment from most people going into the game were favoring the Cowboys a little bit more, and obviously the Eagles just got beat up by the Niners, so I mean that was, that probably helped, but I think the sentiment overall was just like leaning more to the Cowboys than the first time around. So I think that definitely showed on that first drive. I mean, the Cowboys had as good of a first drive as you could ask for. Um, had a touchdown called, almost had a touchdown called back, but pretty much as good of a first drive as you could ask for. And then immediately after that, the Eagles, they get all the way down the field and then fumble. Jalen Hurts fumbles. And just like that, the Cowboys get all the momentum. They go down and score. And literally, the Eagles have only had the ball for like 4 minutes and already down 10-0. So despite the issues that the Cowboys defense has had as of late, as far as allowing too many points, allowing so many yards and all that, as we saw against the Seahawks, his offense has been great. Dak is putting himself in MVP conversations. Right now, at least amongst quarterbacks, he's probably at number one at this point. But that's just a mistake that you can't really make. And they were talking about during the broadcast, hey, Jalen Hurts has been kind of an issue. He's had kind of an issue with turnovers this year. I think he was at like 15. I think he had like 10, 5, picks and fumbles, which was a high for him career wise up to that point in the season. And they doing that and then immediately turning around and having them fumble. It's just like, wow. And then you mentioned again the fumbles later in the game. It's just I just never would have expected the Eagles to come out the way they did. Even if they lost, and we talked about this before we started, the energy just really felt like after that first drive, and then the fumble, it felt like this was just the Cowboys game to win. It was their time. And sometimes that just happens. It was their game. And you could play this specific game maybe 10 more times. I feel like the Cowboys would win. A game like it was, let's say like, well, I don't remember what week it was, but the first time around, you play that game that many times, maybe the Eagles win every time. It's just their day. So I was just surprised to see the Eagles basically like have so many mistakes, the fumbles, the penalties on that drive where they went all the way down and then fumbled. They had like 3 penalties. I mean, it was just a little ridiculous. So that's something that they're going to have to look at because now that's 2 weeks in a row. You're playing the top of the conference. You're playing a divisional rival, a team you just beat in the NFC Championship. That's 2 weeks in a row you got dismantled like that. So you would think they're going to try and they need to try and bounce back against Seattle on Monday night, but that I mean, there's not really much you can say about this other than that it was a really rough outing for him.
Yeah, I mean, this one, like you said, the energy is there from the beginning of the game. Cowboys have probably the best drive you could have, come out smoothly, score a touchdown. Eagles do a little bit of work, but it just feels like they're fighting against something, and then boom, they fumble, and you just feel like, man, that's doesn't feel like the Philly where I used to watch it. And then Cowboys put a field goal, it's 10-0. Doesn't feel like it's over. Eagles didn't get a field goal, make it 10-3. Seems like maybe we might get somewhere. And after that, the Cowboys score again at 17-3, then 17-6, 24-6. That's how we go into halftime, and you can kind of just tell, like, if the Eagles can't get it together very quickly with some high scoring plays, like, this is probably it. And they start the second half with a fumble. And so it just looks like maybe it really is it. Cowboys would punt, Eagles would punt again. Then the Eagles get that fumble recovery touchdown, and there might be some sort of a feeling of hope. But the Cowboys would finish out their game by getting a field goal, and getting a third field goal to make it go up to 33, whereas the Eagles would follow that fumble recovery touchdown with a turnover on downs and a fumble. So it just, I don't know. The energy wasn't there for the Eagles, and I agree. You could play that first game over and over again. Eagles could potentially win that every time. This felt like one of those ones where we can repeat this and repeat this and repeat this. Cowboys probably get this one. Something about this rivalry game when each of the teams is at their home stadium really does something in the regular season. But the Cowboys came out seemingly with a pretty good game plan. They could see that the Eagles are prone to some mistakes here and there when they start to get a little wavery, and they forced a lot of fumbles. Their offense stayed sharp. They didn't leave many drives without scoring. It wasn't a touchdown every drive or anything, but they only had 2 drives where they didn't get something out of it. That was a punt, and then the fumble recovered for a touchdown. Even after that fumble was recovered, they had to get down and put up a field goal before the Eagles offense could get out there. So this was just a good game from the Cowboys. This was simply a bad game from the Eagles. I think it's a pretty easy tale of two stories there. The Cowboys came out and did just about everything right. The Eagles couldn't get it going and took a costly loss.
Yeah, and just to wrap up here, I mean, we I talked about the penalties on that drive. The main thing for the Cowboys that's kind of been killing them the past few years, pretty much, since Mike McCarthy got there, especially in the games against San Fran in the playoffs, penalties. And in this one, 7 for 60 against them, but Eagles had 10 for 95, so they won the penalty battle, I guess, if you want to call it that. Just the one turnover, which did, lead Jalen Carter getting that touchdown and at least making it somewhat of a game, when they came out at the half. But outside of that, they really didn't make mistakes. I mean, other than, not really finishing drives, I guess, as far as getting in the end zone, they probably would have wanted to have gotten into the end zone more than they did. Didn't score a touchdown after the first half, but like you said, when you have all but 2 drives and then a score, one being a turnover and then one being a punt, I mean that's about as efficient as and as good of a game as you can have. So I mean, you take away that one fumble, I mean, outside of they probably want to limit the penalties a little bit more, but they didn't get out of hand and they had less penalties than the Eagles. So um and it didn't kill them at the end and anyway. So I'd say it's a really successful game for the Cowboys. We're pretty good on offense. They ran the ball well. Tony Pollard had some runs that were really good. Just overall, they they just played a really good game. So look, the Eagles are not going to get beat up like this, again. I think they gotten 2 licks back to back now from the Niners and Cowboys. I think they will probably bounce back against the Seahawks, but we can't pretend like this is nothing. When you see a top team get beat like this, same way the Cowboys got beat, that was what, week 4, week 5 now against the Niners. It happened. It's obviously not the same team, but I think we do have to remember is like, hey, these games were played. We can't just completely disregard them. So it's just something to look forward to for the rest of the season and into the playoffs. Because again, I think really after seeing this past weekend, last couple of weeks, it's really just going to be between the Eagles, the Cowboys, and Niners at the end. Um, Maybe Detroit if they can somehow get their act together, but seems like they've been struggling a little bit lately too. So Definitely a game that the Eagles are gonna remember. And these teams play again. Cowboys got a little bit of that momentum heading in their direction.